Okay, so I don't have a lot of free time during the week, so content's going to be a little bit less. Uh, but I did want to put out a video to kind of get some of my thinking going. I'm gonna go ahead and stream this on Twitch. I don't know how good the quality is going to be because I think it's just kind of keeps disconnecting and reconnecting. Um, there, it went again. All right. Any rate, so mostly this is for YouTube. Um, And yeah, so let's get right into it. So this is Budibase. Um, if you don't know, because I didn't, I actually found this recently. But if you don't know, Budibase is basically a, I hesitate to call it no code because it's more like a low code tool that allows you to build. Basically, their shtick is, and there's a lot of really cool videos on YouTube you should go check out on their channel. But they allow you to build um, internal applications that are for basically like admin tools, HR onboarding, all of the kerfuffle of sort of the internal applications that get built in an organization of any significant size. They have built a lot of really cool integrations, and those integrations allow them to do a lot of kind of neat things. So I thought it would be neat to take a look at it and then kind of explain what I'm thinking. So let's just go ahead. We're going to do build a first app. They have really nice wizards all built out. This is intended for an audience of non-developer type people. So there's just some tutorial content here and whatnot. Um, it's really cool. I'm just going to skip. All right, now I can hit finish. Okay, cool. So you can select, which data types you want or things like that. You can create, like a new non-relational table. You can use sample data. We're just going to use sample data. So we're sitting here using sample data. I'm going to go ahead and resize this window a little bit, just so that it is all in here. And actually, I'll bring it over a little bit so it's kind of more aligned to what we're seeing. So I need to change this template so that it's easier to see. I've got the whiteboard there in the background because I'm going to do a little whiteboarding sesh after we go through this a little bit and stretch it out a little bit. So we've got sample data. They've got like an employees and an expenses and an inventory table. You've got your data, you've got your design where you can create screens. We'll do that in a minute. You've got automation where you can add different automations. It's like a node-based workflow. And then you got settings where you can do some various things. Obviously, you can delete your app or create other apps and so forth and so on. You can publish and whatnot. So the idea here is essentially that you're going to have, a very easy kind of curated experience. So let's go ahead, we'll create a table, we'll create a view, we'll just do it off of, the employees table. You can choose your access rights. So public is public on the internet. On the internet, this is a local hosted Docker, but if you do an actual deployment of this, public is internet out there. If you want, basic, that's essentially like your logged in users tier. And then you have power, which is kind of like your power users. And this just basically gives you like three different levels that allow you to, essentially, they allow you the ability to choose what level of access of these three you're going to make a screen. And then you can put different things on that screen. So it's not like a full RBAC, but it kind of is. That's just you only have three roles, and your three roles are basic, power, and end. So for the sake of argument, we're just going to say that we chose basic, and we're going to hit done, and it is going to build this whole screen. Look at that. It's pretty cool. You can do a lot of really cool things. You can sit there and you can have create row, and that'll run and everything else. So let's go ahead and we can look at it in preview mode. And this is an application. I just built a basic table read application in one click. So you can click on this. It's got all your basic CRUD. You can delete a row. You can save a row. Let's close this drawer. You can create a new row. So let's create a new row, and we'll put uh, you know, uh, John, and we'll put Smith, and hit save, and it creates our John Smith row right there. We can click on it. We can edit it. We've got this nice sortable table here. We can sort by, any of these fields. So we're sorted down, now we're sorted up. Our empty row comes at the top. We can, click on it and, make an update. He goes by Johnny, hit save, boom, instant update. Click on it again and hit delete. And I can confirm. So this is a pretty robust app. Like, this is not an insignificant amount of work. Like, you could not build this custom app in, certainly not half a second like I just built. So I feel like there's a lot of things that Budibase got right. I do like that you can do this kind of stuff super fast. If I was a little better at it, like, you can do things with like the navigation at the top. You can add more screens. Like, let's add another screen. Let's create a table-based screen, and let's just do it off of, I don't know, inventory, and hit confirm, and let's hit done. All right, and now that pops in. You notice nav's already done. Boom, right there. I think I can even click and reorder these. Actually, I figured out how to reorder these earlier, and I don't remember how. Maybe I do it over here. I don't know. That's inconsequential. Besides the point. The basic idea is super fast for building a standard CRUD application. Create, read, update, and delete. CRUD. So, and it goes well beyond that, because like you can do the automations. You can do things like we can add an automation. I'm going to go ahead and do name by automation. I'm going to hit row created, and I'm going to hit save, and I get this really nice little node editor. And I can hit here, and I'm trying to remember, I think I can add, I hit plus, that's what it is. So I can hit plus, I can go run things out to Slack, Zapier, I can run it out to Discord, whatever. And maybe, I want to do some JavaScripting, so I can hit save and do that, and I can edit the code, and I get a cool little code editor, and I've got, bindings of like, trigger row and what's in it, and so forth and so on. So I can deal with all these cool bindings, and I can work with it. So this is why it's not no code, it's low code, because I can go in and write, kind of custom actions, and, just do various things with it. I can trash that if I want. I can put this in. And let's say, I don't know. How about I choose, like, you can do a bash script, you can go out to like OpenAI. Let's actually do that. Let's hit OpenAI. Let's see what this is like. So you can do a prompt of like, hello, and we can hit finish and test automation, and let's choose an ID. Trying to remember from helpers. Confirm. I'm trying to remember what this is. Choose table employees, and let's do first name. And let's hit test. And we got an error. We can see the error. See what the output was. No open API key specified. OpenAI API key. So that was pretty straightforward and easy. I can just sit here and do this all day long, do all kinds of cool shit. I can go to settings and do that sort of stuff. Yeah, so relatively cool. So that is Budibase. Let's close that window and let's talk about how this relates to things that I want to do. So I want to build, as I said before, a scalable platform. We're in the process of doing a few things with that. We'll do more this weekend on, building out some of the infrastructure pieces, using Git and using Digger, as we discussed, and getting some of our Terraform going, and then starting to get stuff deployed into AWS. But I want to build a fully inclusive platform that is complete. And what I mean by that is I want the ability to be able to go into this thing and specify whatever I want to do. I can build full applications. So I want it to have, baked in auth. So auth, which is just, the ability for users to log in and so forth. I want to be able to create nice, robust graphical user interfaces. I would like to be able to create them very similar to how Budibase does, where you basically can interact with the data, figure out how the data is going to display, build out automations using a node diagram, and basically have that all kind of run and build. I want to be able to deploy and interact with different data layers. And finally, I want to be able to build out, streams as necessary. So I can do pretty much all of that in Budibase. I want to do it in something that is a bit more holistically scalable than, a kind of JavaScript page builder, which is essentially what they've done. And I don't fault them for that. Like, they have solved a pretty significant problem in the industry in that you can now build these massive internal tools, whatever they be, for your organization. I remember at one point, as a contractor for Cisco, and Cisco has this whole massive internal inventory management system that was built years and years ago. I think they call it something like eMan or something like that. It's maintained by, a whole internal team and so forth and so on. And I get it. Like, if you're Cisco, you get the money for that. If you're a much, much smaller company, maybe you're using Budibase to build something like that out. But what I want to do is make it so that I can build an entire platform. And that implies that in like something, I can specify all these parts, and underneath all of them, I can specify the Terraform, to build all these pieces, all the way down to like the VPC and the ingress and all the underlying stuff. What I want to be able to do is I want to be able to flash a thing into an empty AWS, and then from that point be able to flick a couple of switches in a nice GUI and have all of the crap that you usually have to write, and have that built, essentially. Or preferably have it already be built and then just have it put into a form to where I can make the minor little tweaks. Because let's be honest, we're developers. Well, I'm a developer, and probably if anybody's watching this, they're decently interested in development. Over my 28, 30-year career, I have probably written, no joke, a couple 100,000 basic CRUD implementations. And those basic CRUD implementations look something like this. Like, you start with you build your model in, the DB, and then you build a back-end service to interact with it all. So this is your back-end, and it queries the database, and it presents an API layer to a front end, and then you build your front end, and you do this over and over again. And a new concept comes up. So you've got already all of your tables in your back end over here, and then you've got all of your controllers that talk to your tables. This is all stuff that you've already got. And then it comes time to maintain something because there's something new that you have to build. And you come along, so you go ahead and make, a new table, and then you got to go build a new controller on top of that table. And then on top of that, you got to build a new UI. And if you have a super componentized system, maybe you built it out in like React and Storybook, or Angular and Storybook because you like living in, 2018. Actually, it's probably 2014, but whatever. But yeah, maybe you've built all these things out and they're componentized and it's super easy, but you still have to copy paste a lot of code around. You still have to do all these weird little interactions, and you're just in the integrations business. You're just integrating. So you got to sit there and integrate all this shit. You got to integrate it all internally. For what? It ends up looking the same. Versus you saw in Budibase along the way to being kind of the right answer, as it were, or at least an answer along the way. They made it so that you literally just like, I got this table, just like CRUD ops, make CRUD ops go. I just need to save some shit in here. And maybe got a couple hidden fields and shit like that. So what I am going to work on doing now is I am going to work on creating a system where I can have whatever data layers I want, and I want to be able to deploy those from something. We'll get to that in a minute. And then on top of that, I want some kind of relatively universal API that I can just say, hey, you know what? This is this data and it's over here, and this is this data and it's over here. And then I want to be able to do very, very limited business logics in the front end to where it's like, hey, if I want to run essentially like a database query, then I can say, hey, you know what? Interact with the data in XYZ table or YZX table. I don't really care. So this is, kind of like a universal backend. And then on the front end, I get to just build whatever I want to build. Now, this paradigm's not new. This is essentially the desktop paradigm. Because before you had these three-tier architectures, what you had was your, ye olde desktop, and at the bottom you would have your database, and then you would have your application. And when we started doing all this networking, you couldn't do this anymore because this connection is dangerous over the internet. Because over the internet, this is in a web browser somewhere. This is on somebody else's machine. So I'll change the color here. We'll do a little boundary line. This part is, everything below the line is in the back end, in the data center, or in AWS, or in Google Cloud, or in Azure, if you're weird. But it's not, like, you can't just present it out because somebody's going to break into that thing. So at some point along the line, we took, this security boundary, because that's what it is, and we said, I feel like I'm going to secure that best by putting some kind of an API server back here, API, and I'm going to do a bunch of validation before I talk to the database. I'm going to make sure that nobody's doing anything bad. Then my front end can be in the untrusted zone on somebody's computer, served on the client side. So what I want to build is a standard component for this piece. This will be a universal backend, allowing us to move business logic into the front end, which is inherently more scalable because now the business logic is running on all of the computers around the universe. The business logic is running out on your customer's, machine in the web browser. And that doesn't to say that like I want them to do major number crunching or things like that, but everything related to the presentation layer and making selections of what you want. And GraphQL does a nice job of this. Like it does a pretty slick job. It's a little heavy because remember I'm looking for a pretty massive scale, and I'm trying to make it so that you can do this like insanely on the cheap. So I'm doing that fateful thing of building a new standard around this. It's not really ready yet. I didn't get to put much time in on this weekend because I spent more time on Git and on Digger. But I have an early prototype. I've got it taking inputs, and I've got it built. The first prototype that I'm building on top of Just.js, which if you follow Tech Empower, it does a really nice job of get queries. And traditionally, these sorts of things tend to be built through post queries, not get queries, which requires a certain amount of serialization on the back end, and it also implies that you're going to send much larger payloads. I am working to make it so that the payload is very, very small and can fit in a query string, which involves a decent amount of encoding and some efficiencies there. And then I'm trying to make it so that it's programmatically very easy to expand in the universal backend. And my intention is to also build for each of the drivers, because I'm building a driver layer into the universal backend, so we'll talk to different databases back here, DB. In those drivers, my intent is also to build a front-end driver so that in the JavaScript layer in the front end, you don't have to worry about the back-end encoding. So your actual application up here is just going to have essentially like a graphics picker for picking out the data you want to interact with and what queries you want to run. And what is also neat about that is you get another fun scale factor, because in addition to being able to send, like, say, a join query to PostgreSQL, the intention is also going to be that you can simultaneously from one screen send 6 or 10 or 12 backend queries. And I'm working really hard to make the latency of this be very minimal. So the absolute floor of latency. And I'm trying to make it so that it's essentially just as fast, or as close as you can get to just as fast, if this layer was talking direct to the database. But we obviously don't want to do that for all of the security implications. So, I'm just going to cut this line off because that line is naughty and we're not going to do that. So yeah, that's kind of how we're going to be doing this. Now, there's a little bit more to this, which is once I have all of these working, then my intention is to make it so that there's a parallelism here, whereby you have essentially like an editor. And this editor will allow you to build these front ends and use all of these different layers, and then also allow you to provision backends, so databases, and that will all come out of the editor. And I want to build the editor in such a way that you have a one-button publish. so that you can go in and say, hey, I'm going to build my no-code UI, and you have a one-button publish that you can release, and I want it to be able to handle as many UIs as you want to publish, so that from the front end, you can actually go ahead and test things out and pass in essentially like a state parameter that says, hey, I want to connect the staging environment with prod environment or the load testing environment. And you can build your whole UI that way. And in this same, editor, kind of like a modernized form of an IDE, I want to be able to provision not just databases, but I want to be able to, manage and provision, Kubernetes, and I want to be able to manage and provision, different streaming solutions, to the end goal being like where I ultimately want this to go is at some point, whenever I finish this kind of large scale insanity that I've decided to take on, I want to be able to come on here and on a live stream, and the end goal is going to be, to be capable of going into this editor and setting up an account in the editor. Like I'll probably set this up as like a hosted solution or something along those lines. But to be able to set up an account in the editor, point that account at AWS, at a new account in AWS with minimal setup steps. I want to be able to go into AWS and you just set up like your different environments as sub accounts. And then I want to be able to take that information and I want to do something with it. And I'm not sure if I want to host this. I think I might want to just make it so that it's something like there's like a bootstrap command line or something that just blasts the base layer out into your private AWS. That's kind of more what I'm thinking, to where it's essentially you download, a binary for your machine, sort of like if you download local Terraform, and all you're doing is essentially saying, hey, I want to create a new full environment. And I want it to have like a specific like idiomatic methodology whereby it's like you create your main account in AWS, which shouldn't have to be a main account actually. What I'm actually looking for is the ability to say, hey, I have this massive AWS account, that I've provisioned, or this totally empty one, whichever it is. And I want to be able to go in and create sub accounts for different environments. And I want to be able to go into this tool and say, hey, this area over here is what I call staging, and this one is what I call load testing, and this one is what I call production, and this is how they correlate to each other, and this is how I want changes to promote between them. But I also want to make it so that you don't have to like go through some kind of promotion cycle, generally speaking. I'd like to make it so that these things are segmented purely from a data standpoint. So the only reason they have to be segmented, because what I'd like to do is when you hit publish on the app, I would like it to immediately go out to staging, prod, and load testing as the version. And then you can go into the front end and I don't know, maybe throw something in the query code that's like which one I want to be on, like, throw in like a hash or something and say this is the one I want to be on. And then also in this editor, I want you to be able to set up a hash that can either be used for A/B testing. So it's like, hey, I want you to send 50% of traffic to this hash and 50% to that hash. Or if you have a simpler environment, you can just say, hey, this is the current tag this hash as the one that's out there. And the reason I want to build it this way with this editor managing these things is I want this platform to be something where a single human founder can either build something amazing and just be completely empowered, whether they're a developer or not. And that's it. They just use this thing forever. This is just how they do stuff. But I also want them to be able to have all of the source code behind it, to everything that they've built. and be able to interact with it in any way they want in the future. So that they essentially don't lose any kind of evaluation for their organization based off of what they're doing. And the way that we're going to do that is every piece of source code in these layers will be, owned by them, like all of this application layer. And that's going to basically require the creation of some kind of a project. The universal backend, the stuff that you don't see, that's, kind of, actually, I'm going to grab a different color just to make sure I draw this out. The universal backend in here, this whole layer, the UBE, that is going to be, completely open source as essentially a running engine. I don't know if it's going to be open source. It's either going to be open source or it's going to be source available. And the way, if I do decide to do it as source available, I'm going to license it in a way to where it is a very, very fair license, in terms of economically fair. Like, I'm probably going to make it something like Unreal. Like, I think Unreal's licensed to where, like, it's totally free for you to use until you make $1 million, and then you owe, like, X license fee or something along those lines. But I'm also going to build into that license, and it's going to take some time, and I'm going to have to probably figure out exactly how it's worded. I'm going to build into that license a way in which you can buy a perpetual non-distribution license for the UBE's source code. And what that essentially means is you get to own it, modify it any way you want. You just don't get to distribute it as anything other than the property of your business internally. Like, you don't get to, go out and start selling it and competing with whatever I end up calling this thing. That's the only hindrance that I'm going to have. And I'll probably even have some kind of buyout structure where, like, if you want to do that, I want it to be free but fair. Like, I don't want somebody to go make $1 billion with something I built and then I'm still starving to death. But I'll probably try to build in some kind of a licensing structure to where it's like you can actually do whatever the heck you want, as long as, some non-horrible, cash value is associated with that. And I'm even willing to work with people with it. The point of this thing is to create an environment whereby we as engineers and humanity as a whole doesn't have to keep reinventing the wheel. That's what I'm just perpetually exhausted with. Over the last 30 years, I look back at my career and I look back at how many times I built the same thing. It's comical. And that's kind of the rough bit, is I feel like to move forward as a society, and I mean a global society. I'm not talking about, U.S. or, individual governments or whatever, but to move forward as a human society, we have to start being willing to share. We have to start being willing to make it so that we can build on the past. And we've done a great job of that with so many open source libraries. Frustratingly, weirdly, people keep trying to do things like a bunch of different ways. And I have no illusions. There's going to be, 100,000 different clones of this. And I'm sure there's going to be a whole group of people who are like, this thing doesn't produce good, solid code. My intention is to solve that with benchmarks, with open sourcing, with honesty, with an internal look of this to say, hey, how can we do this better? How can we make this faster? What can we do to improve this? My intention is also that this editor, the first one, and the bootstrapper over here that loads this into AWS. I love abbreviating things BS because it's hilarious. But the bootstrapper over here that shoves this editor into your AWS kind of key account or management account or whatever, like whichever AWS account you arbitrarily decide is where you're going to host your whole like build environment thing. Um, those components are going to be um, the ed will be source available because here's my basic thing. Everything that's going into your AWS environment, which I'm going to highlight in like blue here, um, all of this is in one or more of your AWS environments. There shouldn't be anything in your AWS environment that you don't get to go look at the code for. Full stop. Like, that's just unacceptable to me personally. Like, that is against my personal values. Um, that'd be like, to me, that's tantamount to me saying, hey, I'm going to give you this product that you can take home, but I threw it in an armored box that you can't open. And you will never know what's in it. I think that hinders curiosity, and I think it hinders, interest. I'm the kid that when I was like 9 years old, I was sitting there like taking apart, different circuitries and pissing my parents off and breaking things all the time and figuring out how they worked and occasionally setting them on fire, um, unintentionally, and then later intentionally, because let's be honest. But yeah, anything that's in your environment, you should absolutely have the code to. And I don't think that even this over here, this bootstrapper, I'm pretty sure I'm going to make that source available as well. Um, I'm probably going to copyright the hell out of it because, whatever. Um, Oh, I don't even really know if I'm going to do that. I think I'm just going to license it for certain uses, or I might make it like, one of the GNU licenses that makes it like pure open source. Um, but my intention is probably to sell that as like a product. And realistically, what I'm thinking is I'm thinking about it kind of in terms of something like what JetBrains did with all of their wonderful IDEs, which I pay for. Like you can download IntelliJ for free, you can download PyCharm Community and all these different community editions. I pay them for it because they did a damn nice job, and those tools are amazing. But I want to build this thing, so we'll see where we get. Um, I think it'll be cool. At the very least, I think I am going to get to learn a lot of really cool things. And it's the classic thing like people always say, if you don't know what to build, build something for yourself. And I need this because I've got a few different product ideas that I want to build. And it's just exhausting in that you want to go build something cool and you've got to go deal with all this garbage. Like you got to write auth. Like I've written auth so many freaking times. I'm so sick of it. Um, which also, that's one of the things I didn't mention. My intention is to include like authentication in this. I don't know if that means I'm going to use something off the shelf like Ori Hydra or Keycloak or something like that. But I just want auth to be something that's just like push button. You've got it. And I like how Budibase built in kind of an RBAC. My intention is to build in a more robust RBAC to where you can go in and essentially, um, I haven't quite figured it out yet, but I'm thinking like the individual screens that you interact with, because ultimately everything breaks down into screens. The individual screens that you interact with, or potentially even the components, because then you could through composition, you can make screens that are like, hey, if you're an admin, you get this component. Hey, if you're this guy, you get that component or whatever. Um, but I want that all to be very pluggable. And I want to make it so that I can just go build shit. Because building shit's fun. And sometimes it's not so fun because it's like, hey, I want to build this really cool thing, but AWS, Terraform, VPCs, da 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 da. And I want to make sure that in this thing I have some very sane defaults that allow for massive scale. Like I would like for, the the sales guy that's out there right now that's kind of motivated, that's like, hey, great idea, but how do I build it? I want to turn that into he, you know, does a little Googling, finds my website, buys the bootstrap, buys a license to the bootstrapper, or actually maybe make it so he uses the free bootstrapper. Like figure out some way to do it to where it's like, hey, it's free until you go to whatever or this. But essentially gets the bootstrapper, runs a couple commands, gets the editor in his AWS account, like can sign up for an AWS account and whatnot, and then just go. Like, I would love to get to the point to where the next Jira is written by a product manager, that is like, hey, this is how, projects should work. Or sorry, not product manager, project manager. Well, screw it. Maybe a product manager. Maybe both. Maybe they write competing Jiras. Um, I want to put the tools in the hands to where the next set of software solutions is not built by engineers trying to solve a problem for somebody. It's built by the somebody passionately trying to solve a problem for themselves. And I see all of these no code and low code tools, and there's like a bunch of people on YouTube that are like, hey, how to build your no code SaaS and things like that. And I think it's amazing. I think that's brilliant. At one point in my career, one of my favorite companies that I ever worked for was it was a desktop software. It was a geotechnical engineering software. It was literally designed to track and document and produce reports for borehole lithologies. If you don't know, a borehole is what a geotechnical engineer goes out and, in order to make sure that a building doesn't fucking fall down, they go and do a soils analysis, and they do it by drilling core samples. And this guy, amazing dude, this guy was a geotech engineer and had enough programming experience to be like, hey, I think I could do this with a computer. And then he spent the next 30 years of his life building the best solution he could. And that guy did that because he had a massive amount of motivation, but he also had a bullheadedness about him that made it so that he didn't care that he did not know how to program. He was going to learn how to do this in order to solve his fucking problem. But I want to empower a group of people that may not have that gusto, because you shouldn't have to have that. Like, this should not be hard. We're at a point of society and technology where, these things should be possible for people that, don't know what a KJ flip-flop is and don't know, the swap without the bitwise swap without a variable in assembly language using exclusive ORs, and have never seen leak code, but can still go into this thing and build a scalable system that intelligently helps them so that they can accomplish their business goal. That's what I want to build. And in a way, it's going to be sort of my personal opus and the pinnacle of my career, because kind of my intention with this, like every single job I've ever had, I've worked myself out of a job. That was my goal from day one, minute one. Honestly, it was probably my goal from the interview. It's like, I want to get to the point that when I leave this organization, nobody needs me for anything. If I do my job absolutely correctly, when I leave, they will wonder if I ever did any work. That's what I'm shooting for. But now what I want to do, and this is some crazy swing for the fences bullshit, I want to eliminate the need for engineers. I want to systemically put us all out of work. I want to make it so that every single one of us has to figure out how to be an expert in something else. And I think technology has finally reached a point that I can do it. So, we're going to give it a shot. Should be fun. That is it for now. Wow, I rambled on for 45 minutes about this. I must care about it. Cool. So, peace and be well. And my apologies. There's probably not going to be too many more streams until the weekend. Streams are really weird because like the way my house is set up is I have Wi-Fi over here and it's fucking great for like literally everything. But as soon as I try to pipe video through it, it goes ape shit. And I'm highly uninterested in running a new cable in the middle of winter. So we're probably just going to kind of do this and then higher quality video on YouTube. And then at some point or another, I will break down probably next spring and get up in the attic and pull wire, as much as I hate doing that, so that I can have a wired connection back to the internet. But I digress. Hopefully that is all exciting food for fodder. There's going to be a lot of interesting problems to solve. And the thing I love about this kind of project is even if I fail, we're still going to succeed in getting someplace. And that's always fun. You know, I love the projects where you're not completely sure where you're going. And these are the kinds of things like you don't get to take on in a company. Like you just don't. I'm not even going to lie. I have a trajectory and a massive amount of ambition. And I have no idea if this rocket yeets into space or plummets into the ground, spectacularly exploding. And either way, I'm super excited about it. So yeah, all right. Good night, everyone. Have a wonderful time, and more this weekend. So, all right.